Hello, in this video tutorial, we will be discussing Unit 5, which is our course review and our exam preparation. So if we go to the website, you will notice that that Unit 5 has been opened up this morning. I do start by asking how your research essay is going. Your research essay is due this Friday, so you still have 5 days to work on it. It is our final assignment before the final exam, so if you have any questions or you'd like me to take a look at your research essay, please send me an email. After completing your research essay, as I said, the only thing left is the final exam. Just a couple of really important details here. The final exam is mandatory. You must write the in-person final exam. You cannot earn the course credit if you do not write the exam. So make sure that you are ready and available at 12 noon on Friday, June 12th. So that's excuse me, a little less than 2 weeks away. And our exam will be written in room 106. So it will not be written in the cafeteria like the midterm was. It'll be written in my classroom. Unit 5, which you can click on right here, contains information on the final exam and practice questions. This week and next week, you can meet with me if you like in my classroom or online through Google Meet, and we can discuss your research essay. We can discuss your exam preparation. So please email me if you need anything. Generally, I'm available from 1:45 till 3, but if that doesn't work for you, we can try to work something else out. With that said, I will click on Unit 5 and we'll jump into the course review and the exam prep. All right, see if I can make this a little bigger. Okay. So a couple of reminders, and I'm repeating myself, I know, but your exam is at 12 noon on Friday, June 12th. It is 75 marks, but the 75 marks, I mean, it could be out of anything. It could be out of 50. It could be out of 250. The idea is it's going to be turned into 20% of your final grade. So all exams, all ENG4C exams are 20% of your final grade. Okay. If we go on, the final exam location, of course, as I mentioned, is at St. Michael's in room 106. You know the rules already. Please do not bring in your own paper. Any cell phones or laptops or anything electronic cannot be used during the test. I can provide you with extra paper if you need it, but all you need to bring is a pen, a pencil, something to write with. If you want to bring a drink like a coffee or water, that's fine too. What else can I tell you? There will probably be, I'll have to set up my classroom, so there'll probably be arranged seating when you come in. You'll probably find the desks organized. I have to figure out how to fit everyone into my classroom here. And you'll notice a desk with your name on it, and then just grab that seat, okay? What else can I say about the final exam? Try to come a little bit early. I think I'm going to go in and add this to the rules here. But if you come 10 minutes early, that would be best, because I do have to verify your identity. You do have to show me your ID before you can start writing the test. So you do have to check in. Okay. Again, if you attended the midterm, it'll be the same deal. It's just it'll be done in my classroom instead of the cafeteria. All right. In terms of the format of the exam will be broken up into 5 parts, and so you've got multiple choice, you've got 2 sets of fill in the blank, you've got short answer, you've got a reading response, and you've got a paragraph answer. So multiple choice, excuse me, the final exam has to be what we call cumulative, meaning I have to put something from every unit on the exam. That said, I've taken out certain topics that we've covered this semester. You'll see that in a minute, so you don't have to study them. And I will very much focus the exam on material that we've covered since the midterm, which is mostly The Great Gatsby. Okay, so you'll see the multiple choice. There'll be questions from Unit 1, 2, 3, and 4. So again, I do have to cover a little bit. You do have to show that you know the concepts, the course concepts from throughout the course. So there will be multiple choice questions from each unit. The fill in the blank, the first set of fill in the blank questions, there'll be 5 characters from Great Gatsby that you'll have to identify. I will give you a 1-sentence description of a character, and you just tell me their name. If you don't spell their name perfectly accurately, it's okay, but I do need to know who you are referring to. So you do have to be able to identify 5 characters from The Great Gatsby. In part C, there'll be a second fill in the blank, and that will be figurative language. So you've done an assignment for me in The Great Gatsby in Unit 3, where you had to identify examples of figurative language. On the final exam, one more time, you're going to have to show me that you know figurative language. So that's simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, alliteration, allusion, and onomatopoeia. And so I will give you sentences that contain these figurative language terms. So I'll give you a sentence that's a simile, or I'll give you a sentence that has an onomatopoeia, and you just have to write on the fill in the blank which figurative language is in the sentence. So simile, metaphor, etc. I've given you some practice for figurative language here in the practice questions that we'll get to here in a minute. Short answer, there'll be 2 short answer questions about course content, and be prepared to apply the course content to your own life. So I could ask you a question that relates to, we've covered listening and speaking strategies. We've covered narrative writing. We'll go over all the content here in a minute. But be prepared in the short answer to take what you've learned from the class and apply it to your own life. Reading response, I'm going to ask you to read a news article related to The Great Gatsby and answer response questions. So this is the reading comprehension component of the exam. And then the real writing component of the exam is a paragraph answer, where I will give you, I'll actually give you 2 possible questions, and you can answer whichever one you like better. So you're going to have to write 1 paragraph, approximately 10 to 12 sentences, explaining your opinion on one of the themes in The Great Gatsby, and you'll have to give me examples from the novel. Again, as I say here, you will be given 2 questions, and you can choose whichever one you like better. Please do not answer both paragraph questions. I can only mark 1, and so just answer whichever one you like better. And you'll see that there's some practice question. There's a practice question related to this later in this activity. All right. In terms of content, like I said, I do have to cover at least something in every unit. So for Unit 1, I do expect you to remember the listening and speaking strategies going back to the very beginning of the course. I do expect you to remember what professional communication is and what the difference is between informal and formal language. I expect you to remember what the elements of a narrative are. So a narrative is a personal story. So it's got character and dialogue and conflict and setting and point of view and theme. It's got all the parts that would go in a story. In terms of story elements, I would expect you to remember archetypes and genre. If you go back, I've given you the activity where you can find these topics, and you can go back and take a look. I would expect you to remember story elements. This is kind of the backbone of English literature, of an English course. I would expect you to know, again, character, plot, setting, point of view, and theme. So there is a lot of overlap when we talked about story elements and when we talked about narrative elements, because they're both examples of stories. Literary lenses, I would expect you to remember the literary lenses. I don't think I would ask you a big question about literary lenses, but I would expect you to know them if you saw them, and to be able to briefly explain them. Unit 1 and 2, most of this was covered on your midterm. So I probably am not going to ask you, definitely obviously the paragraph, the reading response, the really big marks on the exam are not going to necessarily be about Unit 1 and Unit 2. Okay, but you do want to go over and remember this content for multiple choice and fill in the blank and maybe a short answer as well too. The Great Gatsby was our biggest unit this semester, and it was the main unit that I have not had a chance to test you on. So a lot of the final exam will be devoted to the Great Gatsby. There'll be a few questions in the multiple choice about the Great Gatsby. There will be the character ID section in the fill in the blank that will be about the Great Gatsby. There will be the reading response will be related to the Great Gatsby, and the paragraph answer will be a theme from the Great Gatsby. So definitely go back and re-look at Unit 3. Make sure you look at the introduction that we had to the Great Gatsby about how it takes place during the 1920s. We talked a little bit about the author, F. Scott Fitzgerald. In Activity 2, we talked about modernism and figurative language. So again, there will be figurative language in the fill in the blank section. And I would just expect you to have a basic understanding of what we mean by modernism. Character types in the Great Gatsby. So we talked about in Unit 3, Activity 3, we talked about whether the Great Gatsby characters are flat or round, static or dynamic. We talked about which archetypes they would fit under. So anything we talked about in terms of story elements with character and with archetypes, I would expect you to be able to apply to the Great Gatsby. I'd really be interested in your opinion about the great Gatsby himself, Jay Gatsby. I think he's a fascinating character. Well, I think Nick is too, actually, now that I think about it. So, but definitely you will have to write at some point about a character or two in the Great Gatsby. What else can I say? Symbolism in the Great Gatsby. So we talked about the colors, we talked about the locations and the weather. We talked about how there's a lot of symbolism where something has a greater meaning than itself. So like the color green and the green light means something more important than just a light. So definitely go back and take a look at the Unit 4 activity where we talked about symbolism. And then in Unit 5, in Activity 5, we talked about the themes in the Great Gatsby. And like I said, you're going to have to write a paragraph about one of the themes in the Great Gatsby. So you definitely want to go back and take a look at the themes in Activity 5. And I would argue your best study guide, if you're going to have to demonstrate your knowledge of the Great Gatsby, whether it's identifying characters, whether it's answering, whether it's putting examples into a paragraph, your best source would be your chapter questions. If you go back over your chapter questions, again, they were not collected, they were not graded. The whole purpose of those chapter questions was to make sure that you understood each chapter. I'm not going to ask about a character or an event or a location from the book that is not mentioned in the chapter questions. So you want to go back and take a look at them. Unit 4, to be honest with you, Unit 4 is primarily covered with the research essay that you're currently working on. But, maybe in the multiple choice, I could ask a question or two. I would expect you to know the 4-part research process, and I would expect you to know research terminology. For example, I would expect you to know the difference between a quote and a paraphrase. I would expect you to know what an inside text citation is. I would expect you to know what a works cited page is. So I would expect you to know basic research terminology. That could come up in the multiple choice. Important, anything not listed on this review will not be on the final exam. Just to give you an example, film elements, you did a film analysis for me, excuse me, and I didn't include the film elements here in Unit 2. So if it's not listed here, I'm not going to ask it. So when you go over this material, you will notice that I omitted some of the activity, some of the content of the activities. Okay. All right. Practice questions. So I've got 3 sets of practice questions here. I've got content questions, which covers unit 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is the type of stuff that you could see in a multiple choice or a fill in the blank or a short answer. And then we have a practice reading response where I've given you an article about The Great Gatsby and asked you to answer the questions. I will not give you the same article on your exam next Friday, but I could but it's going to be an article that relates to The Great Gatsby in some way. So this is good practice. And then practice paragraph answer. I've taken a theme and I've turned it into a theme from The Great Gatsby, and I've turned it into a question. Again, I'm not going to ask you the exact same paragraph question on your exam, but it could be similar, and this is a good practice question. So if we just take a look at these and we open them up, as always, you'll have to make your own copy. And then what you'll see is, in this one, this is the biggest one, the content questions. You've got Unit 1 review questions. So it goes over what we covered in Unit 1. So there's 8 questions there. You've got Unit 2 review questions. And take a look there. There's another 8 questions. And then Unit 3 is the biggest. That's Great Gatsby. And so I've given you some practice content questions. These are just questions like multiple choice or fill in the blank style, where it's just going to ask you, what is Daisy's hometown? What character in the book does Nick say is a careless driver? If you can run through these questions and know the answers quickly, that's awesome. Then you know your characters, you know your events. It's a good sign, even if I don't ask these same questions on the exam. It's a good sign that you remember the book and that you paid attention. If you go through these questions and you get to a question about Nick Carraway and you say, "Who's Nick Carraway? I've never heard that name before," then you might be in a little trouble. So if you look through these questions and you're kind of lost, then that's a sign that you definitely need to go back and review the chapter questions and maybe even review the book itself. Okay. Excuse me. There are some more, there's some figurative language practice questions here. There's a couple of Great Gatsby short answer practice questions that you can take a look at. And then we've got Unit 4. This is research. Again, not many questions, just a couple of questions about some research terms and the research process. So this covers these aren't the exact questions necessarily, but this covers all of the content from Unit 1 to 4 that I could test you on. Okay. If we go back, we can take a look at the reading response. So again, I've just clicked on the reading response here. And if we make our own copy, you'll see that what I've done is I've given you an article called "No One Had the Slightest Idea What the Book Was About: Why the Great Gatsby is the World's Most Misunderstood Novel." So it's got a long title there. But I've given you an article on the following page. I'm going to ask you to read it. And then after you read the article, answer these questions. And there's 4 questions. Okay. What I would say is, on the exam and when you're doing this practice exercise, read the questions first before you read the article so that you know what you're looking for. Okay, so then hopefully you don't have to reread the article a second time. But the article, it fits on, it's about a page, a little less than a page and a half. The article that you will get on the final exam will be a similar length. It won't be much longer than 1 page. And so what you're going to do is you're just going to read this article, and then you're going to answer the 4 questions. What I will probably do, what I've done in this practice, and what I'll probably do in the final exam, is I will include, if there's 4 questions, I would include 3 questions which directly relate to the article that, ask you to demonstrate your understanding of reading and comprehending the article. And then probably the 4th question, I'll give you some sort of opinion question, and I'll probably ask you to provide examples from the book. And when I say the book, I mean the Great Gatsby novel. I don't mean the article. Okay, so most of the questions will be related to the article that you read. One of them will probably ask you to make reference or to use examples from the book itself. Okay. So again, this is practice reading response. And then last but not least, we've got a practice paragraph. And so if we take a look here, if we make our copy, what you'll see here is a question about one of the themes in The Great Gatsby. So this is about social classes and how they're divided into different neighborhoods. And so, again, this is probably not the exact question I would ask on your test, on your exam, but it's an example of a theme paragraph question. And so I will ask you, what I'll do on the final exam is you'll see, let's pretend this is another question. What you'll see, what you'll see is this. It'll say, on the final exam, you will get a choice. So you will get 2 questions. It'll look like 1 and 2. You choose whichever one you like better, and you answer that question. They both will be related to the themes of The Great Gatsby. So if you go back to Unit 3, Activity 5, you can see a listing of the themes we talked about. We also previously did a practice paragraph question about a different theme when we ended Unit 3. So if you go back and take a look at that, you'll get extra paragraph practice, but you'll choose one of 2 questions. Okay. All right. With that said, that is everything. I'll just point out here, important study note, you should have already completed review questions when reviewing for the midterm test. So you should already have review material for Unit 1 and for the first part of Unit 2. And I also gave you review material for The Great Gatsby when you finished Unit 3. So content questions, short answer questions, a practice paragraph question. So you can go back and take a look at the previous reviews that we've done as well too for extra review. So like I say, consider returning to these review questions to help you further prepare for the exam. So that's everything. That's your format, what the exam will look like, your content, what topics it'll cover, and your practice. If you have any questions, please let me know. Like I said, I'm available this week and next week leading up to your exam, which is Friday, June 12th. And yeah, send me an email and I'm happy to help out. Other than that, have a good week and good luck with your research essay.